When asked about my favorite show, Arrested Development, I often reflect on my fond memories of the show and its only 3 seasons. The ambition, the jokes introduced in the pilot, carried out through season 3's end, the unmatched wit and dry humor. Even the double meaning of Arrested Development itself is thematically clever. It sets up a brilliant, well-thought-out writing that reflects the show. Well, at least 3 of its 5 seasons. The first 3 seasons were aired from 2003 to 2006 on Fox before it was canceled and laid in the grave forever. That is if forever is a decade, because in 2013, Netflix swept it up out of nowhere and rebooted it with 2 more seasons, the final in 2017. Being my favorite show, I constantly encourage my friends and family to watch the seasons I claim. The first 3, because the last 2 are long without the bounds of cable, boring compared to the clever wit of the originally aired seasons. I'll admit, off the high of watching the show for the first time, when I started season 4, I never even finished it. I was so disappointed. So, when asked to create a research question about something I'm passionate about, I came up with this one. Why have sitcoms lowered in production quality since the birth of streaming services? It felt right and concise at first, but upon my hours of research, I found my own question to be misleading. Season 4 actually had 22 episodes, 22 minutes long each, like Season 1, still following the cable requirements for a 30-minute time slot. And Season 5 episodes ran on average only about 10 minutes longer. So why, in recounting my memory, did I share my disdain for the falsely remembered long and lazy seasons? In my discovery, I realized that my question only covered one small area of this discussion. It wasn't just production quality that changed when it became easier to send everything straight to streaming. It was the shift of who started creating, and from there, dominoes fell into place, creating a cycle that impacts everyone involved, from the consumers, us, to the CEOs that fatten their wallets with every mediocre release. So when Netflix started creating and producing their own shows instead of just becoming a vault of other media, it created a ripple effect for every platform to follow suit. And this is what I'll dive into today. How Netflix becoming both a content creator and large platform forever impacted the way artists create shows, which monopolized the streaming service industry forever. Netflix was the first popular internet streaming service, and off the hype of its DVD mail-in model, they were the first to produce and create their own shows. House of Cards and Orange is the New Black were the first to hit the platform. They were praised for originality and interesting plot points in both debut seasons. This feedback for Netflix was the answer to commit to this path in making exclusive shows for their platform. However, it didn't mean an initial guarantee. They essentially were banking on enough people to subscribe and keep up with the shows, perhaps a reason to choose their service over the next. Netflix was uniquely the first of its kind, taking these risks that no other platform had dared to yet. In House of Netflix, Streaming Media and Digital Lore, author Benjamin Burrows shares, Netflix is trying to replicate the HBO model of creating quality television, but through digital streaming distribution model. This is a great descriptor of its initial innovation and excitement building new horizons. What could possibly go wrong here? Moving forward, with the success of individual shows unique to the platform, other services like Disney+, Hulu, Apple TV, and more followed suit with their own shows and movies to create social buzz and rope in new customers. This quickly developed from the aforementioned innovation into using original shows or reboots to just get more subscribers and more money for the platforms. So, over time, foregoing traditional ways of cable meant there were no longer a need to rely on ratings to intrigue people to tune in to the next episode of a show. Don't get me wrong, the TV industry has always been for the top dogs to make money, but now it didn't even mean artists had to get these companies good ratings. Now all they'd need is subscribers, so just barely enough interest to keep them coming back. Since consumers were boiling down just to clicks, rebooting a beloved show like Arrested Development was striking gold for Netflix. The buzz alone got several people to subscribe and tune in, and the popular cast and show's unique style kept them intrigued for more. The excitement and build-up seemed like it would come back even better than before. However, authors of The Impact of Netflix and Video Streaming Services on Changes in Distribution, Production, and Audience of Television Series lay out a thematic issue. While earlier episodes had a linear, relatively simple structure with stories that were self-contained within one episode, more in line with traditional series definitions, The new distribution and viewing methods on Netflix complicated the narrative structure, story dynamics, and character development. Combining this and the now famed cast with impossible filming schedules, each episode would follow one character and would rely on a binging format to connect all previous episodes to overlap in later moments. This eliminated a charming feature of the show which many fans, including me, couldn't get past. They let go of their show don't tell mantra and stretched the appeal of the narrator, Ron Howard, thin, with his side quips and fourth wall breaking moments that were a hit. Now, his presence were in long, descriptive monologues, instead of how they used to perform the witty jokes. He was left to fill in the gaps when characters would be absent for episodes at a time, come back for a short cameo later, and we would rely on that monologue. It leaned into a poor communication trope, which got boring early on. But why? When quality over quantity suddenly became a thing of the past, writers and creators were the first to feel the change. As previously mentioned, cable networks have relied on ratings and the number of people tuning in every week to understand the public perception of their show. The idea of catering to viewers isn't brand new, only now it's much more extreme. With every ounce of data and arm's reach for these companies, it is only natural that they would want writers to cater to us. So, what's the big deal if this has been happening since the dawn of TV shows? The issue is that now it almost removes creativity from this process entirely. In cable, it was after artists ideate and write and propose a pilot that any catering changes could be made. Now they're expected to write these shows for the viewers from the very beginning. Since they no longer rely on ratings and interest levels for viewers to tune into further episodes, now it is about binge watching and making more money purely off the play button. Writer Matt Kester shares the effects that these industry changes have on the artistic creators. It changes how shows get conceptualized and how writers foresee audience reception practices. Furthering, author Anne-Marie Navarre-Gill adds on to this too, sharing that there is a linkage between notions of creative freedom and being data-driven played out in the culture of professional Hollywood television screenwriters. So, despite Netflix's initial risks as a company, they soon turned to the safer side, killing creative liberties one data point at a time. In the same article, FX Network President John Landgraf shares his opinions on the use of data when it comes to creating later seasons of House of Cards. Data can only tell you what people have liked before, not what they don't know they are going to like in the future. This quote is extremely powerful to me. It points out the fatal flaw in becoming so logical in such a creative space. Not to get really far from the point and a bit dark, but it looks like we're walking down a path even worse than I'm discussing now. We're now creating and consuming media based off what we're supposed to like and not being challenged or introduced to new media. Even these supposed creative spaces are becoming an echo chamber of everything we've already heard before. But I digress. Furthering my original point, on top of the initial data-driven limitations, the entire process is clouded by expectations no artist would dream of hearing. Pulling from a YouTuber I adore, Mina Lay, she shares in her The Downfall of Streaming video a quote from writer and director Justine Bateman. Bateman says that showrunners are now giving notes like, "This show isn't second screen enough." Essentially, if the show can confuse the viewer from their primary screen, like a phone, they will turn off the show, and this is the opposite of what the platform wants. They care more about the time spent viewing any show versus interacting with a powerful piece of art. Hence why Netflix decided to pour time and money into wrangling Arrested Development writers and cast from a decade prior to revive hype for their platform, making the horror stories that these writers have shared all the more real. Creatively, they didn't seem to be doing much new in these later seasons, but attempting a form of nostalgia bait. Getting the crew back together would be enough, and anything more may be too divisive. Additionally, one could argue that the show creator also faltered and became a part of the cycle they weren't a part of a decade before. Mitchell Hurwitz, creator and writer of the show entirely, said that the show had reached its end creatively when it got canceled after its third season in 2006. He had several approaches about more seasons, even possibly a movie, and he denied them all the time, standing his ground. It makes you wonder how much incentives have truly grown. If an option like reviving this show, even after Hurwitz said no 7 years before, how can Netflix always get what they want and still choose the easy way out? With the world in their hands, Netflix still chooses to produce unoriginal, bland, and perfectly second-screen shows. Even though this would be a great place to end, it would leave out the final piece. This dynamic wouldn't exist if it wasn't relying on the payout from us, the consumers. From the paywall-style platforms that monopolize online streaming to boring content they now create, consumers feel trapped. With so many options, but with media still bouncing from platform to platform, the abundance of choice is almost an illusion. Additionally, producers of these platforms are aware of binge watching and popularity that comes with large quantities of media, like shows. All these platforms can hope for now to be the one that you pay and click to watch their shows. They aren't only competing with other platforms, though. Author Aidan Walker quotes Netflix CEO Reed Hastings in How to Do Things with Memes, and his perspective on binge watching and releasing full seasons on his platform. When you watch a show from Netflix and you get addicted to it, you stay up all night. We're competing with sleep on the margin. It introduces a new and a bit greedy lens on how creating shows became so logistical. Moving forward, lack of permanence is prevalent when paying for a series on one platform for 1 month isn't even guaranteeing the show unless it's been made by the platform itself. We accept that in order to watch a show that you love, it may bounce between platforms and each one has different prices, amounts of advertising, plans, and the list goes on and on. And in this acceptance, these platforms have the power to raise prices whenever, to increase ads, to change the game entirely when they own the media, which is the only part of the system consumers want anyway. So they can raise these prices and without any accountability or expectation for the quality of media to increase as well. Optimistically, I want to assume a more creative freedom too. With more money coming in, they should be able to pour directly into the projects. And this is a hopeful theory, but in reality, it's just not the case. Whether streaming platforms are trying to become a collection of their own work than other media in the future, that's a whole other conversation. Regardless, they have successfully disconnected their media and their brand from our minds, so we can be frustrated with the rising costs, but not expect it to go back into their work. Like I said earlier, when recalling the final seasons of Arrested Development, I recalled a long, boring, uncharming, cheap version of what I believed to be the wittiest sitcom ever. So when I saw that season 4 had 22-minute episodes, like the ones released on cable, I was utterly shocked because something so drastically changed that they felt closer to 40 minutes. The characters felt different, choices felt cheap, this general frustration melts down to something out of my control, but my viewership still funds it. Hence, the cycle that even you and I are involved in. The people at the top will do whatever they see fit for even a dime more in their pockets, and the writers will be forced to do whatever they don't want to, and we will consume the slop. So, in order to answer my original question, why have sitcoms lowered in production quality since the birth of streaming services, I actually have to ask an entirely different question. In discovering how much of this was a pure cycle and how Netflix changed industry standards for good, it made me think about what went wrong. So instead, I ask, how did streaming services becoming content creators affect the industry cycle, from viewership to creativity? How has their content creation become a monopoly of creating direct streaming art? It makes me wonder how it's been hiding its limiting actions all along. By being an all-in-one service, I recall its illusion of choice and permanence for the media they provide, and the only guaranteed shows are their own. At the end of the day, we are hindered with frustrations towards these writers and their boring shows, and upset with the money we willingly give to these platforms. However, it all goes back to probably some greedy CEO, and this becomes a devious cycle. With the money they give, they barely pay people to create lifeless creations that limit them and bore us enough to watch from our peripherals while scrolling on our phone. But when we actually decide to pay attention, the abuse of our dollars becomes clear. And so this new show gets turned off and we go back to our nostalgic classic instead, conveniently on the same platform. Inevitably, this is where I finally conclude. But it still makes me feel helpless. How can I feel in control of my own consumption? I can give a few loose suggestions with my only qualification, too many hours watching other video essays on YouTube. First, ask yourself, why am I subscribed? Be aware of where you are putting your money. Are you wasting $15 a month to rewatch one favorite show or movie? Or is it the catalog that intrigues you? Does the platform only feel like a collection of slop? Get to know the type of viewer you are. Because many people choose to chase a platform that holds their favorite media with no home base, which leads into a second solution: get physical media. Go to a thrift store or eBay.com and search the shelves for that favorite show you can't get enough of, and pick up a DVD player while you're at it. Whether a portable one or one that stays stagnant connected to your living room TV, become your own forever media platform. Lastly, have awareness and hope. This solution is a quite theoretical piece of advice, but the most daunting part of this cycle is the helplessness consumers are left with. In a time where expenses grow, where greed is always skyrocketing, how can we ground ourselves in art? Or at least in curiosity? Essentially, I encourage you to read articles, watch videos, listen to podcasts, listen to people who aren't making the main page of the newspaper. By surrounding ourselves with artists and other consumers who have found a tangible balance in this cycle, maybe they've found new shows that feel good and feel like they get our attention. Maybe on a good day, sit down and give a show your full attention and benefit of the doubt, no phone or laptop in sight. This is how we can truly feel in control in a cyclical industry, because whether we like it or not, it's one we're a part of, and one we must find out how to live in or disconnect from.